Thank you all for being here. I just want to thank Ralph again for that talk. That was the best talk on the HPAI crisis that I've ever seen. I feel like he did such an amazing job of framing the background and framing the risks and the work that he's been doing. And he's come a long way from Argentina. So thank you so much, Ralph, for doing this. We really appreciate it. Thanks. So I'm not talking about the flu today. We're going to have a little pause in the flu before we get into Amandine's talk about bird flu again. So I'm going to talk about our idea for setting up a global ocean disease observing network. And so this isn't something that I'm doing alone. This is very much a community effort. And the co-authors on this talk are Nick, Amandine from Cornell, Ralph, and Clive. But other people have also given input into this already. So Rupert Woods from Wildlife Health Australia has contributed, Patricia Serafini from ACAP, Sebastian Lanos from Cornell. And it will eventually be a much bigger community effort. So this is not anything about me alone. So we often kind of visualize the ocean as these separate ocean basins, and we talk about the Southern Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean. But really, our oceans are all connected. So oceans, they're connected by, wildlife that move across them, by humans that are constantly moving across them, and pathogens are connected across our oceans as well. So when we think about, Nick and Eric have framed One Health beautifully for us this morning, so I don't need to do that. But we understand in this community that, something that's affecting the health of humans is, connected to what's affecting the health of the environment, the health of our livestock, the health of our industries, the health of our wildlife. It's all connected. And our oceans are all connected as well. So to really be able to understand how diseases are spreading globally, it takes kind of an integrated global effort to surveil for marine disease across all of our oceans. So what we eventually would like to see is a network for disease observing across all of our oceans to facilitate operational decision-making in as near real time as possible, and then eventually longer term forecasting and prediction of how diseases might be moving across different spaces and how things are being transmitted. And so at the moment, this sounds like very aspirational, and this is like kind of a long-term project. It's something that will take a lot of time to get something like this up and running. But if we don't start it, then, it will never happen, right? So the idea is that eventually, if we have a network like this, we can really strengthen, the health resilience of our oceans, of our wildlife that are in the oceans, and of humans as well that are using the ocean for our livelihoods and for our food supplies. So for those not familiar with GOOS, which is probably everyone that doesn't work in the marine world, so GOOS is the Global Ocean Observing System. So the Global Ocean Observing System kind of coordinates these essential ocean variables, which are things that we observe about the ocean across different networks across the world. So this network, this Global Ocean Observing System, GOOS, has multiple networks within it that tracks physical, chemical, biological ocean variables across the world. And so over the past decades, there have been multiple different networks that have been formed that contribute towards this. At the moment, health is mostly left out of that. So there is a little bit of health that might fall under like the seabird essential ocean variable or the marine mammal ocean variable, but there's nothing coordinated for like monitoring marine disease in a kind of coordinated international way. So that's what we're proposing to do, if we can monitor marine disease as a new essential ocean variable. And the idea would be to complement the existing networks that are there. So there's networks that are studying things like seabird distribution and abundance, animal movements, environmental data, what's happening at the land-sea interface. And our EOV would just be adding another dimension to that, not kind of replicating what's already there. So this is probably not something that I need to really spell out to this group. I think that in this room, we're all kind of aware of, why One Health is important. But we are kind of reaching this point in time where climate change, biodiversity loss, and zoonotic disease emergence are really converging, and potentially creating huge problems that we will have to deal with in the future. And this current HPAI outbreak has really exposed gaps in our understanding and our marine disease surveillance capabilities. So the way this disease has spread across the Southern Ocean, as Ralph has so beautifully laid out for us, was something that we didn't predict. We did a risk assessment for HPAI in the Southern Ocean about 2 years before it actually got there. And our estimates on how it would move through that space were pretty bad. We really didn't understand which animals would move it, which pathways it would go across, how it would get to the Southern Ocean, how fast it could move across that space. We just didn't have that understanding at all. And it really made it clear that we just don't have enough basic understanding of how diseases are transmitted across our world's oceans by marine wildlife. So we see that there's a real need for a coordinated, standardized, as close to real time as possible ocean health monitoring. So something like this aligns with the objectives of GOOS. It aligns with the UN Decade of Ocean Science, which is ongoing at the moment, and of course aligns with our One Health global movement. So the problem is, so there's no kind of routine marine disease observing at the moment. What does happen, there is some work going on, but it's patchy. It's kind of this species or this location or, this particular disease that's being watched for. And it's very non-standard in the approach. So everyone is kind of trying to answer their own particular research question or answer their own hypothesis and is collecting data in their own ways. And that's fine, but it leads to like a very kind of siloed landscape where, we can't really talk to each other about what is happening in different parts of the world or different parts of the ecosystem. And it makes things slow too. So if we're waiting for, people to publish their scientific results in papers, then often that's something that takes like a year at best, often like 2 years or even 3 before we're kind of getting that information. So for people that are operating in these spaces, like say a tourism operator in Antarctica that doesn't want to take a group of tourists to a penguin colony that's full of dead birds, waiting a year for that to be published is just not useful, right? So having mechanisms where that data could be available much more quickly would be very helpful across a lot of different industries. Most of the marine disease work at the moment also is still not really integrated with movement, either movement of animals or movement of humans that are potentially spreading these pathogens. So there's a lot of work that can be done. So when proposing one of these GOOS networks, we have to think about what we're actually observing. So we can start fairly small and constrained with this, and then new observations can be added to this over time. So this is something that would be great to have input in, actually. So if anyone has ideas about how to contribute to this or how to, work up this network, I'm very open to hearing them. So we're thinking about pathogens, presence, absence data, direct or indirect detection of pathogens. So that could mean indirect detection would be antibodies. So we're detecting past exposure. Direct detection would be, say, PCR sequencing, the animals currently infected with this pathogen. And then sequence data could be part of that collection as well. We can then observe things like disease events, so mortality, unusual morbidity, that sort of thing. And there's potential for other types of observations like AMR genes and that sort of thing. And we're open to suggestions about what would be good to include. And really, we're looking for this to not replicate what's happening in the other essential ocean variable networks. So there's a microbe monitoring program already, which looks at microbes that are kind of free living in the water column. So we're not trying to detect all bacteria and replicate what's already there. There's a lot of work already on wildlife abundance and distribution, a lot of work on animal movement, a lot of environmental data observations. So that already exists, and we're not trying to replicate those things. So our kind of pathway that we need to follow to get this done. So firstly, we need to come up with our vision for the network that's complementing these existing GOOS observing systems. So we're not, redoing work that's already exists. We need to form several working groups to make this happen. So we'll need people to contribute their expertise on data management, expertise on, virology, expertise on ethics, expertise on molecular data, that sort of thing. So a series of working groups will need to be formed. And we really need this to be kind of an inclusive community of practice. So for an observing network like this to function correctly, we would ideally like everyone to be contributing their data into this in the long term. And of course, people will be resistant to that at first because people don't like to share their data before it's published. But we hope that, you know, in time, people will come around to the benefits of this. But yeah, from the beginning, we would like this to be as inclusive as possible. We'll need to develop standardized protocols and best practices for everything from biosecurity to field collection of the samples to our laboratory work to data analysis. So recommendations of what people should be doing for their data to be included in this network. And this is not something where we need to reinvent the wheel because a lot of this exists. So WOA and, you know, the Wildlife Health Australia have kind of documented a lot of this already. So it's really up to us to kind of find the best practices and point to those and then develop standardized protocols where those don't already exist. For this to work and actually to be useful to managers and, you know, operational users and scientists in the future, we need open data sharing. So that will take us having this data openly accessible in a way that's useful to people. So that will take a bit of work, but there's platforms like OBIS and the accompanying ODIS, which handles the metadata side, that can do this and potentially point out to, if it's things like genetic data where databases already exist for that, we can just point out to those. And then other types of data we can include in OBIS and ODIS. Next, we'll be trying to do like a regional case study for key pathogens of interest. So we want to show people how this can work, and, you know, it can't be like global and everything from the beginning. So we'll just show kind of a targeted pilot study of this in the Southern Ocean, which I'll get to in a minute. Following that, we can focus on capacity development and knowledge transfer. So we need to develop training materials for this to show people, if this is your data type, this is the walkthrough of what you need to do. This is where you can find the best practices, that sort of thing. And then longer term, this effort should support operational decision-making and then eventually forecasting and prediction of how diseases might move. So this sounds really big and ambitious, but actually we've done this before, or other people have done this before, including Clive, who's sitting here in the middle of the room. So ANIBOS is an amazing example of this. So ANIBOS is the animal-borne ocean sensors network within GOOS, and they do incredible work collecting oceanographic data via sensors that we stick on these marine mammals. So you can see here this happy little seal with its telemetry device on that's going to collect all sorts of salinity and temperature and depth data. So ANIBOS was established within GOOS in October 2020, so not that long ago, endorsed by the UN Ocean Decade a year later in October 2021. The data is all freely available online from these animals and their sensors. There's best practices published that tells people how to go out and collect these types of observations for themselves and then contribute them to GOOS. And since this network was established in 2020, 120 papers have already been published using ANIBOS data. It's incredible. Like, the diversity of these papers too is amazing. So everything from, you know, what's happening with sea ice in Antarctica to how seals are using polinias to, you know, predicting cyclones, I think. There's all sorts of amazing different ways that this data is being used. And this is only within a few years that that's happened. So this is a map from one of Clive's recent papers that shows the data that is available within ANIBOS. So the colours show the countries that have contributed this data, and you can see the kind of coverage of the amount of tracks that have been contributed from these animal-borne sensors into the ANIBOS network. So these types of things can happen, they can work. So we would like to make a pilot study for this in the Southern Ocean. At first glance, the Southern Ocean is a difficult place to do this, and that's kind of why it's the best the best test case, right? If we can make something work down there, we can make it work anywhere. So the Southern Ocean, it's hard to get there. It's hard to sample these animals. We don't have a lot of research stations where we can be there continuously. No one country has jurisdiction, so it really forces us to collaborate internationally. So this global aspect of this network, we can showcase that here in Antarctica. You know, the group of people that are developing this network is already international. So to do anything down there, you have to kind of work across a bunch of different countries. So that photo is Clive and Andre on our Weddell Sea expedition, by the way. So that Weddell Seal was healthy. It didn't have bird flu, just if anyone was wondering. The Southern Ocean is also incredibly connected. So this is tracking data from 17 species of birds and mammals that has been collected across the Southern Ocean. And people think that the Southern Ocean isn't connected, but look at this, like this is connected to South America, to New Zealand, to Australia, connecting up to, what's over there, Asia maybe? Incredibly connected, like both across the Southern Ocean and then to other continents as well. Human connectivity as well is increasing all the time. So this is a plot of the number of tourists visiting Antarctica. So you can see that we had like a little dip during COVID, but that has kind of skyrocketed over the last 20 years. Like the number of people going there is just growing year on year. And every person that gets there, Antarctica is pretty strict on biosecurity, but everyone that's there that's walking through a penguin colony, there's a risk. There's a risk that that person's going to transmit something. There's a risk that you're going to catch something from a penguin. There's a risk that you're going to carry something from that penguin to the next colony you're going to tomorrow. You know, if you have hundreds of thousands of people walking around these penguin colonies, there is risk associated with that. At the same time, we all know how fast climate change is shifting things in Antarctica. It's more rapid there than just about anywhere else on Earth. And we're seeing huge changes in the ecosystem already. We're losing ice. We're seeing species move their distributions. And then as they move their distributions, things come into contact that weren't previously in contact. And that gives the potential for emergence of these new kind of host pathogen relationships. So it's a really important place for us to be monitoring for disease. So this is our plan over the next few years. We would like to go and trial this in the Southern Ocean, do our case study and show how we can make this work. In the meantime, to set up a network like this and to actually make something like this work, it's going to take a lot of input from the community. If anyone has ideas on this or would like to discuss it further, please reach out to any of us that have been listed. We're all very happy to take input. And then in time, we'll be circulating our proposals and papers to everyone so that everyone has the chance to contribute if you would like to. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got time for one question, one pressing question before we move on. Oh, out the back there.
Jules.
Jules.
Thanks.
Around sort of KC sitting within GOOS, so at the moment, would you see it as a standalone EOV or I don't know if the seabed extension abundance specifications got help in there?
Yeah.
Did you sort of see that embedded within those specification sheets or is it standalone?
No, we see this being a standalone EOV. So there are like aspects of health in some of the EOVs. So in the seabird EOV, for example, but you know, more broadly, health is mostly left out of GOOS. So I think there's definitely space for an EOV that is marine disease specific. And we'll be, of course, you know, working with the seabird EOV team to make sure that we're not replicating and we're, you know, making sure that everything is integrated properly. So Patricia Serafini, who's you know, on the ACAP HPA working group, she's one of the leading forces in the seabird EOV. So she will be part of our leadership for this EOV as well. Yeah. Clive?
One last quick question. Last one.
I think Clive's responding to Julie, maybe.
Sorry, I was just respond to that. Jules, good question. The EOVs, as they understand in the specification sheets, disease comes up in a number of the marine mammals, seabirds, the whole lot. The idea behind this method is that it will act in a similar way to the soundscape, where it'll integrate across things that will focus on disease, not on the actual taxa, like the So it'll be more of an indicator, rather than which is what the South Sky. Maybe just think of it in that. But
Absolutely. Yeah,
Thanks,
we'll keep the
Mike.
discussion going in the group afterwards. So just want to thank Jane again for a fantastic talk. So
Thank you.